Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. Your host, JP John Paz, right here at the TMPT feed, a part of the two-man power trip of wrestling's podcasting empire. I'm, of course, the one-man power trip behind the two-man power trip. And here on the show today, we're going to be talking about the top 10 dream matches that never was. The top 10 dream matches of Hulk Hogan, the immortal one, the GOAT, the great, the Babe Ruth of wrestling, Hulk Hogan. The 10 matches that didn't happen, that should have happened, that almost happened in some cases, and in some cases may have happened elsewhere, but didn't happen when they were supposed to happen. So, very interesting topic today. Very interesting kind of 10 subjects here. And obviously, let me know in the comments anybody I missed, anybody that should have been put in that was omitted, anybody on the list that you don't agree with that should be on the list. So, please let me know what you think of the list as well, either way. So, right here, right now, let's focus in on basically what are the top 10 dream matches. And we'll go in reverse order here for the Hulkster. We're going to talk about the first one, which is one that maybe some people might have some doubts about, but there was some heat. And obviously, not that long ago, a recent promo cut by this certain individual on Hulk Hogan, somewhat disparaging the Hulk's name. But of course, he was a part of the 10 Bell Salute. So obviously that was kind of water under the bridge, if you will, after the Hulkster passed. But of course, we're talking about the one and only former heavyweight champion, the current WWE superstar, and that is CM Punk. Yes, he is definitely deserving of this list, in my estimation, number 10 on this list. So not very high, obviously, the first one out here, but was a ballyhooed match. Even all the way going back to 2007, they had a backstage incident, supposedly, apparently, and kind of led to some heat between them. But that would have been an interesting matchup between these two. Don't know what really year could have happened or when it could happen, but this is just one of those what if dream matches. And of course, with CM Punk's promo on Raw and some of the things that he said, that kind of led to some more speculation and some more just, people throwing it out there like, oh, that should have been a match, or Punk should have fought Hogan. That would have been a great dream match. So, going to throw it out there. Number 10, CM Punk. All right, let's talk about, excuse me, the next man up here. And this is an interesting one just because it was very heavily rumored that was going to happen. They teased it on the house show. You threw it out there. I talked about it on the Hogan Era podcast. Find out on the feed all about it, and you check out that old episode that I did probably about a year ago on the Giant Gonzalez on the Hogan Era podcast on the TMPT. But here we go, the Giant Gonzalez. Yes, back in the summer of 1993, at a house show, these two had a big stare down and led to people thinking like, okay, we're going to revert back here to the old days of Hulk Hogan in the 80s when he's wrestling all these giants, Andre the Giant, Kamala, One Man Gang, the Boss Man, King Kong Bundy, Big John Studd. It was a formula that worked so well for the Hulkster. They kind of went back to the well a little bit when he was in WCW with a lot of the members of Dungeon of Doom. And obviously, there was a guy like Earthquake too, and then he obviously was in Dungeon of Doom as well. But just throwing big guys out there that seemed to be a good formula for a long time that really worked well for Hogan. It was Hogan versus the Giant, Hogan in peril, the babyface working from underneath, working his way up, and the monster looking like he's unstoppable. Hulk would Hulk up and, of course, end up eventually slaying the Giant and beating the monster. So this was out there. This was done basically at a house show. They kind of teased it, and everyone kind of assumed that it was going to happen. The big rumor was that it was going to happen at SummerSlam 1993. So obviously Hogan would be gone in early August of 1993. He would beat Yokozuna on a bunch of house shows in England, part of the Hulkamania tour out there. Then basically Hogan quietly leaves WWF. Obviously on TV, the whole thing was he got beat at the King of the Ring. Yokozuna kills basically Hulkamania, and then he kind of moves on out to pasture, if you will. But the real story is he worked there for many more months, basically 2 more months after that. And then after the England tour, he's basically gone with a bunch of other superstars. But they did tease this. So Hogan and Giant Gonzalez was teased on house show. That's why a lot of people assumed that, okay, we need Hogan star power. We need a little bit more oomph for SummerSlam 93, Hogan versus Giant Gonzalez. Why not? That's a fun match. That should have been on the card. But it was not to be. So no Hogan and no Giant Gonzalez feud. It doesn't happen. But that is a dream match. A lot of fans talk about it to this day. And obviously that picture tells you 1,000 words right there. Just a spoiler alert here. We're not done with SummerSlam 1993. So coming up We're going to have more on SummerSlam 1993. Next up here is a very interesting one because they took the picture together. So obviously this is in the WCW days. Hogan, basically late 95, early 96, he's in that Hogan gear. Conan's got the Mexican heavyweight title there with him. So basically, he's a AAA champion. He's a champion in Mexico. Hogan's a WCW champion. He's the big champ in the United States. He's the number one guy in the United States. Conan is the number one guy in Mexico, and that was supposed to be the feud. So I talked to Kevin Sullivan about this. We've heard from Conan about this. We've heard many different stories from different wrestlers about what if and what could have happened, but there was really a plan in place. Bischoff even had a plan in place. And I talked to Sullivan. He confirmed it as well. They were going to do a series of 3 matches. Hogan would win in the United States, WCW. Conan would win a match in Mexico for AAA. And then they would come back and have the 3rd match in the United States for WCW. And Hogan would win the 3rd match. So he'd win 2 out of 3, which, obviously would be amazing for Conan to be in a 3-match feud with the Hulkster. But even get a win over the Hulkster, so that would have been amazing. But they did take this picture. This was rumored. This was teased. So it's one of the things that it is out there, and it has been said, it has been talked about, and it was even almost pen to paper, almost done. So Hogan versus Conan, USA versus Mexico, the Mexican heavyweight champion, the WCW World Heavyweight Champion, US versus Mexico, almost happened, but it didn't. So another dream match there for the Hulkster. Next up, the one and only David Batista, rumored to be around 2005 era, maybe even a little bit after that. It was kind of thrown out there and teased, maybe even going into 2006. Thrown out there, obviously, they did have some 6-man tags, Hogan, Batista, and Cena, on a bunch of different dark matches. They did have a match on Raw, too, but a bunch of dark matches as well, and some house shows and stuff. So they did tease this match, and obviously Cena as well. We'll talk about him in a minute, but Batista Hogan was rumored, it was teased, was thrown out there as a possible match. Obviously, Batista, the big gun, if you will, one of the 2 top guys in the WWE during that time. Him and Cena were kind of 1 and 2, if you want to say 1A, 1B. One was basically the big face of SmackDown, one was a big face of Raw, but when you kind of throw it out there, he's still one of the biggest names going, especially at that point with Batista. And then why not throw in one of the biggest names of all time and one of the biggest WWE draws of all time, Hogan? So yes, this was teased, this was talked about, this was rumored, and obviously much more from a fan perspective. Like, what if Hogan versus Batista would have been very, very interesting. Don't know how good it would have been as far as in-ring would be concerned. It would be maybe a little bit tough to pull off for Batista and Hogan with his advanced age. Obviously, they went in a different direction. He feuded with Shawn Michaels, which was a great feud, and then obviously he feuded with Randy Orton as well for SummerSlam 2006. So next up, we have somebody who definitely played a big role in the Hulkster's career. Basically, when you look at superstar Billy Graham and you look at Hogan, you're almost looking at a mirror image, if you will. You're looking at somebody who emulated the other guy. So obviously, Hulk Hogan did love superstar Billy Graham. Growing up as a fan in Florida, was just in awe of the superstar. He had the charisma, he had the look. He was kind of the prototypical WWE superstar before they really had the prototypical WWE superstar, which of course became Hulk Hogan. So it's one of the things where Hulk kind of became what Billy Graham almost should have been or could have been after he beat Bruno Sammartino as world champion before losing to Bob Backlund. Maybe they should have went in a different direction and had superstar Billy Graham turn babyface and have the big run. But obviously that was not to be. That wasn't in the plans of Vince McMahon Sr. Vince McMahon Jr. had different ideas, and obviously Hulk Hogan, who did emulate a lot of superstar Billy Graham, he took the ball and ran and took it to stratospheres that the wrestling business has never seen before. So as far as Hulkster is concerned, he loved superstar Billy Graham. He was a huge superstar Billy Graham fan. He emulated a lot of stuff from Billy Graham. Some of the tie-dye eventually that he would wear would be an exact copy of superstar Billy Graham. So a lot of the things he did, very superstar-like. Obviously, same with Scott Steiner, same thing with Jesse Bonaventura. He is an absolute legend and somebody that you obviously want to emulate. He is the man. Superstar Billy Graham was amazing. Next up here, yes, Bruno Sammartino. This was one of the things where you have one era against another era. This era of Hulkster, obviously, that wasn't really necessarily going to do big babyface versus babyface matchups. Maybe not a passing of the torch moment, so to speak. But you really didn't need one, the Hulkster. You know, he just took the ball and kind of ran on its own. But that's one of those all-time matches that people always talk about. What about Bruno versus Hogan. Obviously, Bruno feuded with Macho Man Randy Savage. Obviously, Bruno feuded with Roddy Piper. Both were heels at this point in the mid to late 80s. So totally different circumstance, totally different ball game there. But they did team. August 29th, 1987, Baltimore, Maryland. Hulk Hogan and Bruno in Pittsburgh, defeating One Man Gang and King Kong Bundy. So they did team, but there was a much ballyhooed, a much rumored dream match between basically your legend of one era versus your legend of the next era. Would have kind of been a huge kind of passing the torch moment, but that wasn't the era. They didn't really do it like that in the 80s. Just wasn't the way it was particularly done. I mean, they've had matches where babyface, and obviously Bruno and Pedro Morales had a big match, but it you do a schmoz and stuff like that. They didn't really do the passing it towards babyface. Much WWE, much their pattern was transitional heel champion, and that's how you go from one babyface era to the next. So another awesome dream match could have been Hogan and Bruno. Speaking about one generation to another, speaking of a huge dream match, John Cena, the never seen 17, John Cena and Hulk Hogan. This was kind of teased and thrown out there, like I mentioned with Batista. Yes, they had some Raw match, they had some dark matches, they had the house show matches together. So they kind of teased that Hogan was with this new generation, the new crop, that somewhat of a passing the torch moment as far as throwing the guys together and throwing the guys out there. One of the things was this ever really kind of going to happen? Hulk threw it out there and kind of teased that it was rumored to happen at WrestleMania 25. Obviously, it doesn't happen. Cena actually fit Batista on that show. So different beast altogether. When you look at it, though, the kind of prototypical guy for the WWE obviously is Hogan. He's a prototypical WWE guy, and Cena kind of fit the Hulk Hogan mode. Like that's where Cena was born. That's the way Cena was created. He was basically, hey, here's the mold. It's basically what you're looking at here is the next Hulk Hogan. That's what they wanted John Cena to be. Obviously, Steve Austin was a completely different babyface than that. They were always looking and searching for the next Hulk Hogan, and John Cena became the next Hulk Hogan, the guy that basically, when you're looking at it with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, he, the ultimate babyface, the clean-cut babyface, the white meat babyface, the ultimate good guy. That's what Cena was, and he became the next Hulk Hogan, if you will, the next Hulk Hogan for that era. So this would have been kind of a nice passing the torch, if you will, moment as well. With these two, obviously doesn't happen. And I apologize. Cena versus Batista doesn't happen until WrestleMania 26. WrestleMania 25, John Cena versus The Big Show versus Edge. Cena wins that match, retains, and wins the World Heavyweight Championship in that match. But Hogan did say WrestleMania 25, that was the rumor, him versus Cena was going to happen. Who knows if that's true? We've heard many different stories, even a Khali rumor thrown out there as well for the Hulkster. Just a honorable mention out there to the great Khali, because he obviously doesn't wrestle Hulkster, and he doesn't make the list either, but just throwing it out there. So Hogan Cena was a big rumor, and one of those dream matches that fans will look at and think of, well, one era versus the next, but obviously Cena a lot younger than the Hulkster. There's about 30 years difference between 25 years difference between them. So would have been hard to pull off as well, I think, in my view. Next up here, we're going back to SummerSlam 1993. And yes, Bret and Hulk Hogan did wrestle a bunch. They were in some handicap matches in the late 80s as far as Hulkster and the Hart Foundation were concerned. They did wrestle in WCW as well on a bunch of house shows in 99 and even on a Nitro in 1998. But there's really kind of no finish, a lot of schmaz going on there. They didn't really have the dream match that we were expecting. And the rumor, Vince threw it out there. Bret has talked about it. I mean, you'll hear more about it coming up with me and Bret, but Bret did talk about this, and they did film something together where they were basically all like the Hogan Conan picture, where they had the belt between them, and it was a tug of war, and that was basically gone by the wayside. They did away with that photo shoot and kind of deleted it from memory, if you will, but it was never to be. It never happens. But that was the rumored main event of SummerSlam 1993. Had they not went into the different direction as far as Yokozuna being the world champion and Bret basically started a feud with Jerry the King Lawler. They kind of went into a completely different direction than what Bret was initially told. And I got to be honest, if you really wanted Brett to be the guy, you really wanted him to be the champion, you really wanted him to be, the next Hogan, if you will, why not set him up better and have him, feud with Jake the Snake Roberts and Ultimate Warrior and a longer feud with Flair and stuff like that, instead of a rookie necessarily in Yokozuna, rookie in Razor Ramon, just didn't set him up properly for the world title run. But imagine this, SummerSlam 93, instead of Luger versus Yokozuna for the world title headline, imagine if it's world champion Bret Hart versus Hulk Hogan, and maybe even Hulk Hogan do the job for Bret. But as it goes, Hulk really didn't want to do that job for Bret, but he would do the job for Yoko, and he did do that at the King of the Ring. Bottom line, whether you like it or don't like it, Vince has the final say. Vince has the final call. So it was Vince McMahon that basically decided Yokozuna was the guy to kill Hulkamania, kill off Hulk, and then have Bret feud with Jerry the King Lawler instead. All right, next up, second to last here on the list, number 9, Roman Reigns. Yes, that is him on the left. Sika is not in the picture, but Sika is next to, obviously, his son, Joe, Roman Reigns, and Hogan is holding him in the basically early 80s there, but I want to say probably 1984-ish. And then we're looking at another picture from WrestleMania 31 with Roman and the Hulkster there. But that is a much ballyhooed and much talked about WrestleMania type main event. Maybe not necessarily Mania, because he was a lot younger than the Hulkster. Obviously, they're probably about 30 years difference. There would have been maybe hard to pull up, but that's one of the ultimate dream matches when people compared Roman Reigns and his 4-year title run to Hogan's 4+ year title, basically 5-year title run. That was the thing. It was like, well, Hogan Reigns, imagine if they wrestled, they had a dream match. Hogan Reigns, Hogan in advanced age, but just think about the dream match that could have been out there if he did ever wrestle Roman Reigns. You had one of the greatest champions of one era, one of the greatest champions of the other. Arguably one of the greatest title runs of all time, Hogan's, and then arguably one of the greatest title runs, Roman Reigns. So you throw that out there, would have been very, very interesting. Hogan's title run, of course, 1,474 days. Roman Reigns' title run, of course, 1,316 days. People will say Backlund, whatever Backlund, hate to break to everybody out there, his was actually 2 title reigns. Antonio Inoki beat him, so he did not have the basically 1,500, 1,600 day title run that we think he did, because it got broken up by Antonio Inoki. So there's 2 different title runs. So the closest in title runs in WWE history, you got Bruno, his 2 runs there, and then you got Hogan, then you got Roman Reigns. So basically 4th in history, 3rd as far as wrestlers all time in title runs. And these are the 2 guys, when you look at more the modern era of wrestling, kind of discount Bruno maybe a little bit, you'd say Hogan best champion, maybe Reigns possibly 2nd greatest champion of all time. And that last but certainly not least here, obviously the ultimate dream match. We've talked about it. Why didn't it happen? It should have happened. Of course, Hulk Hogan versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. When you talk about the 2 biggest stars of all time, maybe the 2 guys that go on Mount Rushmore before anybody else, Hogan and Austin, the big star of the 80s and 90s versus the big star of the basically late 90s there, and the Monday Night Wars, WWF versus WCW, Hogan and the NWO kicking WWF's ass for 2 straight years. Then all of a sudden we get the Montreal Screwjob. We get a lot of interest in heel Mr. McMahon, and who is going to give him his comeuppance? Who's going to kick his ass? And it was none other than Stone Cold Steve Austin. And he was, it was the lightning in a bottle. Didn't act like a babyface, but he certainly was, because he was one of the most over guys of all time. He completely flipped the script, flip wrestling up on its head. We got the Attitude Era. We got a huge Monday Night Wars. We were spoiled as fans big time. So when the WCW eventually loses WWF, obviously the main event that evening, and I was at this Raw, April 13th, 1998. I was at this Raw in Philly. Austin versus McMahon. Remember, with one arm tied behind my back. Austin Vince that night, and that was what broke the 83 weeks of dominance, really 90 weeks of dominance, really 2 years of dominance from Hogan, from WCW, from the NWO, and that would lead you to basically a huge run from Austin, huge run from the Attitude Era, huge run to WWF, and WWF never really looked back. Eventually they really kind of put the nail in the coffin in early 1999. But really, when you think about it, Austin is the one that did it. So when Austin and Hogan have the chance to wrestle in WWF, WrestleMania 18, 2002, doesn't happen. Austin refuses to work with Hogan because he didn't want to do it. He said Hogan didn't want to work with him years ago in WCW. He didn't think they'd have a good match. Every excuse you can ever think of. Bottom line, he didn't want to do it. He kind of reneged on it. So what happens? The Rock does it. And Rock and Hogan have one of the all-time greats, probably the greatest WrestleMania match of all time, maybe tied with Bret Hart versus Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13. But man, what could have been between the two biggest stars of all time? Still, you get Hogan and Rock, two of maybe three biggest stars of all time, because I put Austin a tick over Rock because I think Rock kind of was made a little bit by Austin, but that's a different story for a different day. But bottom line, here it is. Hogan Austin never happened, should have happened, is the ultimate dream match. The two biggest stars of all time, the two big Mount Rushmore guys, the two biggest draws ever in the history of the business, right there, Hogan and Austin. It should have happened, could have happened, and Austin didn't want to do it. So that's the bottom line, because John Paz said so. So let's wrap this bad boy up and let's head towards the plugs. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check out the website, patreon.com/TMPT Empire. Go to TeePublic, tpublic.com/store/TMPT. Get your Hogan era gear today. Not only that, you could definitely check out some other stuff from the 2Man Power Trip as well, and be on the lookout for some new books possibly coming away about Bret the Hitman Hart coming in 2026. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It's right back here next time.